Today's video is gonna start out with a confession. Hello everybody, I don't have a name, I'm 16, and I like Paranormal Activity 4. You might remember that in a previous video I said that this was both weak and a disappointment. I still stand by that. It is the weakest in the series, and it is a disappointment when you consider the fact that we have been waiting for an actual sequel to Paranormal Activity since 2009. But on its own, and even as a sequel, I don't dislike this film at all. I acknowledge that it has flaws, and I understand how a lot of fans can see this movie as a betrayal, but I still enjoy this film. Before we start, I'll say really quick what I thought of the other movies. I love the first movie, and I've talked about why I love it twice now. If you don't know by now, watch those videos. I'm not that fond of Paranormal Activity 2, mainly because it's a bit of a rehash. It's not bad, it has its moments, but it's not fantastic either. I liked Paranormal Activity 3 a lot. I think it knew what to change, resulting in a flawed but still very solid movie. However, it did get annoying in that even though the ending of Paranormal Activity directly sets up for a sequel, both 2 and 3 are prequels, filling the role of the sequel as Paranormal Activity 4. And this is where it gets complicated. So here's my video explaining why I like Paranormal Activity 4. When Henry Joost and Ariel Schulman took director's slot in Paranormal Activity 3, the series had a tonal shift that carries into this film. After the third film, the editing, pacing, and tone were more reminiscent of traditional horror rather than found footage horror. While subtle, this change had the movies feel more like traditional horror movies that just happen to be found footage. This isn't necessarily a bad thing, as this has applied to a lot of great movies before, including Paranormal Activity 3. But this film reveals some of the disadvantages that the shift has. In the first and second movies, a lot of the fear comes from the tropes of found footage, which are rather subtle. The second two films are less subtle, upping the intensity and using a lot more special effects. The problem with that is that it becomes very easy to fall into relying on jump scares. Here's the thing about jump scares. They are scary, but will never be as scary as they were the first time, and they fade fast. Plus, relying on jump scares is cheap. But not all of them are bad, as long as they're creative. Something like, say, the Upside Down Room in Paranormal Activity 3. Paranormal Activity 4 has a lot of jump scares, but most of them are standard to the point of cliche. They use banging on walls, falling chandeliers, they even do the cat thing. Some scares you can easily predict, others are overused to the point of just not being scary at all. But some of them are okay, and some of them are really good as well. And it stays with keeping the fear about things the audience doesn't see. It's an excellent use of effects, both practical and computer generated. Plus, this film marks the first in the series, paying homage to other horror films. There are probably more, but this film gives a shout out to The Shining, The Exorcist, Rosemary's Baby, and When a Stranger Calls, all without feeling like a knockoff. But definitely the best scare has to be the climax. This movie might have the scariest climax in the series. It's well-paced, intense, and has a prevalent feeling of everything getting real. As strong as the endings of the previous films were, they were small in scope. This is where things really start to get insane. The body count is high, the tactics are aggressive, and the implications are horrifying. This ending's word card would be like a whole paragraph. Overall, while the fear factor isn't as high as it is in the previous films, it's okay, and it is worth it to get to the end. Contrasting to the horror, which played it safe, is the choices made in the screenplay, making a huge gamble by introducing an entirely new cast of characters. But thankfully the acting in this film is excellent, something even people who hate this film acknowledge. Our main characters are Alex, played by Catherine Newton, and her boyfriend Ben, played by Matt Shively. Newton gives a remarkable performance, excelling in both comedy and drama, and Shively's character is extremely funny and likable. I love the dialogue between these two. When it comes to creating a realistic and engaging relationship, this is the closest to the brilliance of Mika and Katie the sequels ever got. But the acting is also good in the supporting cast. Besides Alex and her family, the cast includes Robbie, a new neighbor kid from across the street, who has to stay over when his mother has to go to the hospital. Brady Allen gives one of the best creepy kid performances I've ever seen, mainly because he still acts like a kid. A lot of other creepy kids act like adults. but it's so much more effective when the creepy undertones are buried beneath someone who acts like a little kid a lot of the time. But the best character is definitely Robbie's mysterious mother, whose identity is revealed later in the film.
I was gonna be so mad. I was supposed to be babysitting.
Well, that surprised all of no one. Seriously, that was the 9/11 of plot twists. But, nevertheless, the return of Demon Katie is definitely the best part of this movie. This is one of the few times in the series where the audience knows something that the main characters don't, and it works well here. Very, very well here. The scariest part of her performance is when she acts nice and pleasant, because we all know on the inside, she's really... that. Alex, you better watch out. She can throw people around, snap people's necks, and punch people so hard they die instantly.
Welcome! Punch!
You're screwed. By the way, the effects on the demon faces are really, really good. Overall, the acting in this film was great, which helped keep the audience invested. This film has a lot of good things going for it, but there are still plenty of problems. Just a warning, this is where the spoilers begin. The first problem is that this movie tends to rely on leaps in logic and contrivances. First off, there are little things like webcams recording video files like 8 hours long in HD, but there are worse things than that. A lot of times, events happen not only just to set up for a scare, but also would never happen. Probably the best example is how they set up the levitation scene. Alex doesn't just wake up because her mother gave her sleeping pills that night. Why on earth would any loving mother ever do that? Well, apparently Alex has been up for a lot of nights, and Mom just wanted her to stay asleep. But we all know the real reason why she did it was that the plot needed her to. Throughout the entire movie, there's also the very tired theme of the parents never believing the kid about the haunting, even when clearly paranormal things happen to them. The severe lack of listening is not only annoying and infuriating, it's boring. We all know what's going to happen because we've seen this cliche so many times. But the biggest problem this movie has involves one of the film's plot twists. Pretty much everybody assumed that Robbie is really Hunter, the baby demon Katie abducted in the second film. This makes sense because the paranormal activity starts when he stays at Alex's house and befriends her little adoptive brother Wyatt. But it turns out that he's not Hunter. It's revealed that Wyatt is Hunter, and that demon Katie plans to abduct him and possess him, and that she's gonna use Alex as a virgin sacrifice. So, take back what I said before. This is the 9/11 of plot twists. This is a great example of a twist that doesn't work at all. It's shocking, I guess, and it's more clever than what the audience was expecting, but who cares? It reminds me a lot of the twist at the end of the last broadcast. Yes, it all really does go back to the last broadcast. But that's only half of the problem. The other half of the problem is that when you think about it at all, it makes no sense. This plot twist has two huge plot holes. Plot hole number 1. When, why, and how did Demon Katie lose Hunter? Why would she ever let Hunter out of her sight? They reveal in the second film that the demon has been waiting for a male child in the family to possess since, like, the 30s. Why would the demon ever give the kid up? Or lose it? Or let someone steal it? Either Demon Katie lost Hunter, or she put him up for adoption and decided to get him later. I don't think option number 1 is very likely, since the demon can pretty much do whatever it wants now, so let's consider option 2. It's revealed that it takes a while for a kid to get ready for possession, so maybe Demon Katie put Hunter up for adoption intentionally, and planned on getting him later. Well, maybe, but Demon Katie intentionally giving up Wyatt for any reason at all is a bit of a stretch. Maybe she had to give up Hunter after her car accident. There might be options that make sense, but that's not the point. The point is that I shouldn't have to make up a scenario myself. That's the movie's job. Now we have plot hole number 2. If Wyatt is Hunter, then who's Robbie? Is he just some kid that Demon Katie abducted? Why? When? This just raises a ton of unanswered questions. There's nothing wrong with a plot twist, but it should not make the story just implode. It might be explained in Paranormal Activity 5, but in the context of this film, it makes no sense at all. So with all that said, why do I still enjoy Paranormal Activity 4? There are a lot of problems in it. I think the reason why I like it is that the problems don't take away from all the things the movie gets right, like the acting and characters and some of the horror. And the plot, while flawed, at least furthers the story, which is a lot more than I can say for a lot of sequels. I think the main reason why people hate this movie so much is that the other movies were so good. At the end, while Paranormal Activity 4 feels rushed, and there are much better films in the series, I still think it's an okay horror movie. In many respects, it furthered the story, took more risks than any of the other sequels, and I respect that. In the end, you could do better, but you could certainly do a whole lot worse. See you next time.